Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Chag Sameach. As we enter into this last day of Pesach, people always ask, is it 7 days or 8 days? And I think it's important to say this, that for the Reform community, we observe 7 days. So Pesach officially ends for those Reformed Jews who wish to follow 7 days. Some do 8, but I don't. It ends tomorrow night. And so tonight begins not only Shabbat, but also Yontif, Chag. And so we are thrilled to celebrate together. Tonight, our service has a couple themes. It's the last day of Pesach as we journey on from our Passover journey into the counting of the Omer, these 7 weeks that bring us to the foot of Mount Sinai, and we enter into the unknown. You know, we've crossed the Red Sea now, and we don't know where we're going. We have trust, we have faith, and yet we are marching. And each week of the counting of the Omer, we are ascribing a different theme. And this week's theme is affirmations of love, Gemilut Chasadim. We'll be talking about that in a little bit when we start counting the Omer. But just to introduce, for those who might not know who we are, I'm Rabbi Joe Black. I'm the senior rabbi. Cantor, who are you?
I'm Cantor. I'm the senior Cantor. I almost thought about being someone else for a second, but
you can change your name on your Zoom. You know, you can be whoever you want. Rabbi?
Hi, I'm Rabbi Emily Hyatt. I'm the associate rabbi.
Good to see you. And?
Hi, I'm Steve Brodsky. I'm the Cantorial Soloist and music director.
Wonderful. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We continue with kindling our candles for Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat v'shel Yom Tov.
This is the season of freedom from the will of tyrants, of freedom from the bondage of self to become a nation and a people together. This is the season of release from captivity and oppression, of release from a foreign land to receive God's holy word. This is the season of redemption, of redeeming our bodies and souls, of redeeming our strength and power in service to Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. This is the season of freedom, of reliving the ancient journey, of remembering the treacherous path. This is the season that calls us to stand together, the season that summons us to God's law, the season that leads us home.
Lehodod l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך העליון. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. On this, the day of days, my lips shall sing your praise, for I know that you'll always be here surrounding me. Tov lehodot l'Adonai ulzamer l'shimcha Tov lehodod l'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. I wish to understand the wonders of your hand, for all the blessings that are mine rise from your design. Tov lehodod l'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodod l'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon.
So Pesach, we read Shir HaShirim, as we're going to do in just a moment, the Song of Songs, that speaks of love. And the love is an allegory in Shir HaShirim between God and Israel. Tomorrow morning at Torah study, I'll be talking about this as well. But Lecha Dodi, every Friday night, we have an opportunity to greet Shabbat like we would greet a bride, with love, with anticipation, with joy, or a groom, or a partner. And we do so with words, "Come, my beloved," to greet the Shabbat bride. Just as we say, "Ani ledodi v'dodi li," I am my beloved and my beloved's is mine. The springtime calls to us. The Shabbat calls to us to rejoice, to give thanks. Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Let's sing that again. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, ishmiyanu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki ba'orech kumi ori. Uri, uri, shir daveri. Kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. I invite you to rise, either physically or spiritually, as you're able, and face the entrance to your worship space as we together welcome the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
And now that we have welcomed Shabbat and Chag, our holiday and our regular Shabbat, into our homes and into our spaces, we call each other and we call God and we call ourselves to this moment of prayer. We alert everyone that there is going to be this call to spirituality and to prayer. And so we rise physically or spiritually as we are able for the Baruch Hu. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening.
Ahavat olam
beyond all space and time. Your love enfolds your people, Yisrael. We receive it in your teaching, your gift of Torah, sacred obligations, discipline, and law. Together, so let us speak these teachings when we lie down and rise up and find joy forever in your Torah and mitzvot. They are the very essence of life, ours to ponder and study all our days. May we never lose or be unworthy of your love. For you are blessed, the one who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one, and we will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. You may be seated, and please join me in chanting Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha vishinantam levanecha vidibarta bam beshivtecha bevetecha uvlechtecha vaderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha vehayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher Hotzeiti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Liot Lachem Le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
The Israelites walked into the Red Sea 1 foot at a time. What were they thinking about as the water rose up their legs, chilling their hearts, advancing toward their open mouths? Together, we continue to walk here, now, 1 foot at a time, on our better days forward. Alone, I cannot reach the far shore without drowning. Somehow I don't go under. The person to my right holds me up. Something I cannot see holds him up. Blessed is the source of help, so often unexpected. I step forward. The sea is vast. Blessed are you, gracious one, for your miracles that greet us every day.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef eleh. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, and the river is wide, and the river is deep, and the river is standing between you and me, and freedom, but we shall overcome one day. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef eleh. And the river is fear, and the river is hate, and the river is standing between us and the gates of freedom, but we shall overcome one day. With a tambourine and a mighty hand, across the sea and the desert sand, let the children sing for Miriam next year in the promised land. Next year in the promised land. Next year in the promised land. Next year in Jerusalem. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef eleh. And the river divides, and the river forgives, and the river's a wall, and the river's a bridge to freedom, but we shall overcome one. Freedom,
V'ne'emar, thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Quiet now. Listen, breathe, and listen. You are music. Your breath and hands, your smile and tears, your eyes and pulse are notes that dance in the space between us. Together, we are music, a symphony conducted by the rhythm of life, by God's hand, by our choices, day by day. Our notes play on separately together the sacred sound of living. Our music waltzes, making melodies fresh and new, never heard again, bass lines that pulse from our hearts to the soul of the universe. Together, joy bends sorrow, sorrow bends hope, hope bends grief, grief bends love, love bends joy. The silence is your longing. The silence is your yearning for a different song. The music of your own will blocks your heart to the harmonies already dancing around you, to the chorus already singing around you. Oh, you hidden delight of heaven, oh, you secret gift of God, we are music. We are music. The music plays through us. Quiet now. Listen, breathe, and listen.
We rise as we are able, physically or spiritually, for the tefillah.
וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר, מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורון, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממיר ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללו חסלה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We are attuned to the holiness around us. We are attuned to the music around us. We also are aware of those in our community in need of God's healing blessing. And so we offer this Misha Berach, this prayer for healing. And as always, I'll be reading a list of names. But if there are others whose names are not on this list, people in your life, say them out loud, say them silently, so that all of us might ask for God's healing blessing on their behalf. We pray together. Mi sheberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. On this Shabbat, on this last day of Pesach, we are mindful of Zachary Hoffman and David Karner, David Lustig, Jeff Cohn, David Goldenberg, Stuart Myers, Catherine Plus, Jean Silber, Scott Englander, Stacy Hoffman, Kristen Myers, Corey Franklin, Sandy Shore, Brian John Miller, DMD, Jerry Wacknov, Michael Roger Janae, Shirley Glass, Shanti Khazan, Jenny Brynan, Lynn Pollard, Howard Rosenberg, Deborah Alenikoff, Alex Buznavetsky, Sean Wall, Michael Altenberg, Isabel Make, Charles Zandel, Ellie Greenberg, Lori Goldman, Randy Velick, Elena Stryker, Faye Greenspan, Cyril Beinhorn, Jamie Eidelberg, and Larry Ambrose, along with all those whose names are being typed in, all those who are giving vaccines, all those on the front lines, all those suffering, and all those helping. We ask for God's blessing upon all of them. We say, Baruch atah Adonai, Mikor HaRefuah, we praise you, Adonai, the source of healing. Mi sheberach imotenu, Mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And now we take a few moments as we move away from the printed page and find those prayers imprinted on our hearts as we look within there to find God, and we pray in silence.
past week at our Seder, we read the words, B'chol dor vador, chayav adam lerot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, one must look upon oneself as if you yourself personally had come out of Egypt. What must that feel like? Well, there is a little piece of us that is imagining what that emergence feels like right now as our world slowly and carefully emerges into a new kind of freedom. And also in our Haggadah, it teaches us that if God had just done one of the amazing miracles, Dayenu, it would have been enough for us. The fear and the love, they come together. One must support the other if we really are going to put one foot in front of the other. And so we remember and we experience as we move forward, one foot at a time. Can you picture yourself crossing through and wandering the desert? Can you feel the wind support you as you go? Do you hear the cries of those left behind, still hoping for tomorrow? Do you fear the mountain you still have to climb? B'chol dor vador, chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu yatsa mimitzrayim. B'chol dor vador, chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu yatsa mimitzrayim. Ilu otzianu mimitzrayim. Ilu otzianu mimitzrayim. Dayenu, dayenu, dayenu. Dayenu, dayenu, dayenu. B'chol dor vador, chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu yatsa mimitzrayim. Yatsa mimitzrayim. Yatsa mimitzrayim. And so, now we come to the moment in our service where we usually read from our Torah scroll, but tonight, because it is both Shabbat and Erev, seventh day of Passover, we're actually going to bring a different text to you this evening. We are going to be bringing the text of Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. Now this text comes from the third part of our Bible, Ketuvim, And it is called a Megillah, not to be confused with Megillat Esther, but it is called a Megillah, a text that we read, an extra text that we read in order to enhance the spirit of the holiday. So what is Song of Songs? Well, the Song of Songs, if you have not experienced them yet, is basically many chapters of love poetry. What are we doing? Reading love poetry at the end of Passover. And in fact, as you'll hear in just a moment, it is from Song of Songs that the famous line, Ani ledodi v'dodi li, comes. What are we doing? Well, what we're doing right now is we are affirming, we are lifting this idea that as we go into the unknown, there is great and radical love that comes from God. In the Talmud, the rabbis have a long argument about which books are appropriate to be let into the Bible. And not every sage agreed on exactly how our Bible turned out. But the Mishnah teaches us that while there was great argument about Esther and Kohelet, and even the book of Job, when the time came to discuss Shir HaShirim, every sage unanimously agreed. Because, they said, while all the other books might be holy, Shir HaShirim is like bringing forth the Holy of Holies. This idea of supporting us through love and this idea of beautiful partnership was so core and so important to the rabbis that they knew that it must be included in our Bible, and they knew that it must be included on what is one of our New Year's, our holiday of Passover, as we move forward. So, at this moment, we are going to chant some Shir HaShirim for you, I hope, with Rabbi Black. Okay, good. That's good. So I'm going to chant in Hebrew, and Rabbi Black is going to read the translation of what I am chanting in English. So here we go. We begin. Shir HaShirim asher li Shlomo.
The Song of Songs that is to Solomon. Can we see the text?
I don't think that's a good idea. I think we're just going to do it in gallery. It's not
Okay,
prepared.
very good. I just don't have it in front of me, but I'll try. Okay.
Rabbi, here we go. I can send it to you
Thank you.
one more time.
Oh, did you already send it to me once?
It's
Oh,
okay.
you did.
Put it in
Oh, I have it.
there.
I've got it,
Okay.
actually. I do have it. Okay.
Perfect.
Somewhere.
Wonderful. So let's try it one more time. Rabbi was just reminding us that the very first line, Shir HaShirim Asher Li Shlomo, means that there is a tradition that King Solomon himself wrote this section.
Go.
Here we go. Anadodi ve'amar li kumilach rayati yafati ulchilach.
My beloved spoke thus to me. Arise, my darling, my fair one, come away.
Kine astav avar hageshem chalaf halach lo.
For now the winter is past, the rains are gone and over.
Hanitzavim niru v'aretz et hazamir higia v'kol hator nishma be'artzeinu.
The blossoms have appeared in the land, the time of pruning has come, the song of the turtle dove is heard in our land.
Hatena chanta fagea ve'hagefanim smadar natnu reach kumilach rayati yafati ulchilach.
The green figs form on the fig tree, the vine in blossom give off its fragrance. Arise, my darling, my fair one, come away.
Ani ledodi vedodi haroe bashoshanim.
I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He browses among the lilies.
Simeni chachotam ali brecha kachotam al zeroecha ki azach mamerava kashachishol kina reshafer ishfer eish shalebet yah.
Let me be a seal upon your heart, like a seal upon your hand, for love is fierce as death, passion as mighty as Sheol. Its darts are darts of fire, a blazing flame.
Mayim rabim lo yuchlu leva lechalbot et ha'ava unharon lo yishtefua im yitarish et kol beito bava boz yavuzulo.
Vast floods cannot quench love, nor rivers drown it. If a person offered all their wealth for love, they would be laughed to scorn.
Perhaps the best known line from that passage that Cantor just chanted so beautifully, Dodi li va'anilo haroe bashoshanim, Dodi li, my beloved is mine, and I am my beloved's. This beautiful melody was written by our friend Cantor Steve Scher, who sadly passed away within the last year. I know he was a good friend and musical colleague of Rabbi Black's, and he was actually my very first camp song leader when I was 12 years old. Made a big impression on me, and this melody is very, very popular. I can't tell you how many Jewish weddings I have sung this song at. Join me. Dodi li vani lo haroe bashoshanim, Dodi li again, Dodi li vani lo haroe bashoshanim, Dodi li mizotola min hamidbar, mizotola min hamidbar, Dodi li vani lo haroe bashoshanim, Dodi li bekuteret mor, moru levona, Dodi li, Dodi li vani lo haroe bashoshanim.
take a few moments now to have some words of learning. And I've been thinking a lot this week about something that we spoke about very briefly in the Seder learning session, if you were with me. We were talking about the idea of Bechol Dor Vador, and it struck me, which it means in every generation. It's one of the commandments that we have on Passover. We'll come back to it again. But it struck me in that moment, and I told this story of when I was in rabbinical school. I had this really cool opportunity when we are in Jerusalem studying over Passover in Israel. They send us out like minions to the former Soviet Union, and we lead seders for Jewish communities in the former Soviet Union that don't have liberal seders to go to, and it's this really amazing opportunity. And I went to this place called Lutsk, which it turns out is like 2 hours away from another place called Shepatovka, or it used to be called Shapatovka, which is where my grandma's family is from. And I had this crazy experience where the chicken soup in this crazy foreign country in the middle of nowhere, I was in Ukraine, tasted exactly like my grandma's chicken soup. And it was really this wild Pesach moment. And what I've been thinking about is that I know a lot about what grandma's chicken soup tastes like, and I can imagine also the gefilte fish, but I don't know that much about the family that lived in Shepatovka. And in fact, my grandma was one of the kinds of grandmas and ancestors that we have that really wrote everything down, right? We have binders that are passed down in my family that have pictures of that of who lived in Shepatovka and of all of the family that was there. We have their names. We have so much information, and yet I don't know so much about her. About the family that came from there. I know that my great grandmother that left Ukraine was Rebecca, and she was married to Israel. And those are my great-grandparents, and I know some of their stories. I used to sit on my grandma's bed and wear her jewelry and listen to her tell stories about her parents. I know that they came to the United States and that my great-grandfather came 7 years before my great-grandmother, and that they eventually settled in Omaha. I know that my grandma's oldest sister, Dorothy, was fascinated that America had chocolate milk that was stored in tiny cardboard boxes, which I can imagine was, in fact, probably life-changing. And yet, I don't know much about who they were, what they looked like, what they sounded like, what they dreamed about. So think with me for just a second about your ancestors, about your great-grandparents, about those that came before you. Think with me for just a second. What are their names? Where do they come from? What do you know about them? Because it is a little bit strange to think that we don't know that much about, even though they're not that far back, we don't know that much about them. I don't know what color hair any of those ancestors have, because even though we do have pictures, the pictures are all black and white. I don't know what their voices sounded like. I don't know what they wanted out of life. Were they kind? Were they strict? Were they harsh? Were they loving? I don't know. But for many of us, we do know something. We know that, 150 years and 1 week ago, our great-great-great-grandparents were sitting around a table somewhere in the world, dipping their parsley into salt water and breaking that middle matzah, just like we did last week. The Seder calls every generation, every single generation, to go back to that moment in Egypt, and it reminds us that every little bit of life that we live is a part of the quest that each of us are on as we search for meaning and spirituality in our world. This is so much the reason that, as we so beautifully just experienced with Cantor and Rabbi Black, we read Shir HaShirim at the end of Pesach. Our commentators see this as, in addition to being a love story about two partners, and that's what we just heard, that translation of the poetry of love. But our commentators and our sages say that it's also the story of the Jewish people and God. That sometimes we see each other and we can love each other. Sometimes we can't find each other and we feel lonely. And that in every single generation, our relationship with that which is bigger than ourselves is what brings meaning and hope and purpose into a world that we know can be a little bit dark. And so the Seder and the Haggadah that we just experienced, they call us to be a part of the whole, but also they ask us to add our own layers to the history that makes up our collective identity. We don't remember our great-great-grandmothers. We just don't. We don't live long enough. They don't live long enough. But I know that mine probably also lived in a world that was sometimes pretty dark. That's why she had to leave her country. That's why our ancestors who were slaves in Egypt had to leave theirs. You know that your great-grandmother also probably struggled like everyone else did and does to make sense of the darker days. And we know that they probably wished in those really hard times for God to redeem them when things were especially hard. And if we grew up in Jewish families with Jewish ancestors like mine, we know that our great-great-grandmothers sat at their tables decades ago this week and ate bitter herbs and charoset and made chicken soup and gefilte fish and listened to the words of our Exodus. And as she listened, I imagine that my great-grandmother, Rebecca, would have heard the words that we have said so many times this week. B'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, we are commanded to see ourselves as if we came out of Egypt. Lirot means to see. We're commanded to see ourselves. But when you play with the language, as you know I love to do, that same root of see is often used in the Torah to mean to show. And so what if we use that? In every generation, we're obligated to see ourselves and we're obligated to show ourselves. Because this holiday invites us to see ourselves in the past and to add our own chapters to the story we tell each year, a story whose goal is to build a Jewish people that is steeped in history and tradition and who is secure in our identity. Ashir HaShirim teaches us this relationship between the Jewish people and God and between the Jewish people and our identity, who we are. It's a work in progress. And as we wrap up our Passover holiday this year, I invite you to add and tell the rest of the story. Yes, of course, the Exodus from Egypt, but also the Exodus of our grandparents from Morocco or Algeria or Yemen or Tunisia or Germany or Poland, the USSR, Ethiopia, to tell the stories of Brooklyn and Westchester, Chicago, St. Louis, Omaha, Indiana. Tell the stories also of Alabama and South America and Ireland and India and conversions and classes and decisions to join the Jewish people, or to tell of the moment when we became a part of or close to a Jewish family. These stories, all of them, honor the diversity and the realness of the pasts that are represented in our community today, and they lift up the purpose of Passover, to remember the story of a people that has survived for thousands of years. Our sages know that tradition lives on when we look back and when we spend the time thinking about what came before us, not just the story of Passover that was so many generations ago that even though we're commanded to see ourselves, it sometimes feels intangible, but the stories of generations that are so much closer to us. And so we have 3 things that we must do on this last evening of Pesach 5781. We have 3 jobs for us. The first job is to think of what we will do to pass these stories on. Not just the story of Passover, but the story of Shepatavka and of my great-grandmother who came over on that boat all by herself. This is the night when we pass on the tradition of the Jewish people. On Pesach, we declare that we have roots. And even if we're different, even very different from our grandparents' grandparents, those roots are still growing and spreading. And so we are reminded to honor them. That's our first job. How are we going to tell those stories? Our second job is to record our stories, our realities of today. We have the opportunity to teach our children the lessons that we have learned and that we are learning the hard way. We can tell the story of this pandemic, of this season of uprising and protest and violence, this time filled with truth-telling and discovery about long-buried injustices and discriminations. That's a part of what we do, what we have to do, what we're obligated to do when we see what is not right in our world. We have to add these hard realities to the legacy that we pass down, so that like we know that freedom drove our people from Egypt and that freedom drove my family from what is now Ukraine, our children will know that we stayed and fought for justice and equality for all humankind. That's our second job. Our last job is to dream, to imagine what stories we might be able to tell our grandchildren and their grandchildren about how we will have grown and changed and built the Jewish people and healed the world in our own generation so that those roots can sink deeper and reach further. I hope that in 150 years, my great-great-great-grandchildren will gather around their table, I don't know, maybe in their colony on the moon, and they will eat chicken soup that still tastes like my grandma's chicken soup, and talk of how brave we were when we fought for our own children to have a better life. I think that's what it means. Bechol dor vador. Chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, we have what to teach. We have what to fix and learn, and then we have to teach it so that every generation that comes after us can see that we can and that they can and that we will and that they will and that we will tell the stories of what we have done and where we have been and what we have been able to fix. Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom.
Yasher Kochech, beautiful, Rabbi. And I was watching how people were sharing their backgrounds on Facebook while you were talking, which is really very, very special. You've touched a chord, so as you always do. So thank you. So another thing that we do on Pesach, at the end of Pesach, and actually after the first day of Pesach, is we go into counting the Omer. Omer is a measure of barley, but it's so much more. We're commanded that the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, we count each day, we count each week. We go on a spiritual journey that takes us from the liberation that Pesach is all about, and then into the unknown, until we arrive at revelation, understanding, where we can put all the pieces together, both of our history and our future and our relation to one another and to God. And each week we have a theme. So this week's theme is chesed, which is a word that means so many different things: generosity, love, compassion. We journey into the expanse, the unknown, and we receive in love. And so we are going to be taking excerpts from this book, Journey Through the Wilderness, a Mindfulness Approach, a mindfulness approach of counting the Omer by Rabbi Yael Levi this year. She writes, this first week of the Omer, we notice what inspires our generosity and what causes us to close down and to turn away. We wonder at our capacity to give and receive love, and we strive to cultivate the practice of responding to ourselves and others with compassion and with kindness. And so the 6th day of the counting of the Yomer is Yesod, the foundation, Shebechesed, that is in love, rootedness within love. Sparks of divinity are hidden within every person, within all experience, within all creation. Seeking these sparks, revealing these sparks, fills the world with love. We breathe in the love that flows to us from past generations. And rooted in this love, we go forward into the expanse. And so our practice for this Shabbat, this last day of Pesach, is to take time to remember, as Rabbi Hyatt did just so beautifully, and honor the gifts and blessings, whether it's the taste of chicken soup or the values you received from loved ones who have passed out of this world. Say their names aloud and give thanks for their lives. Vayavouni chasadecha Adonai teshuatecha ki im ratecha. May chesed, generous, abiding love, come through me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to count the Omer. Hayom Yom Shishi Hayom Shishi Yamim LaOmer. Today is the 6th day of the Omer. And we continue with Aleinu.
Yes, we do. I invite you to rise as you are able as we begin to conclude our service with Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. On this Shabbat, we remember those who were taken from us during this past week. We remember Betty Tremblay, the aunt of Paula Englander, and those who were taken from us during the previous 30 days, Dick Cook, Dr. Phil Lewis, Erwin Harold Silverberg, Marvin B. Solomon, Daniel Spira, and Leonard Streer. And we link with their names those whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of whose death occurs at this time: Louis Edelman, Hattie Amter, Lorraine S. Perotin Asarch, Hildegard Baer, Helen F. Balaj, Emil Bauer, Candice Lynn Bender, Doris Bornstein, Dr. Abraham W. Brown, George Cohen, Lena Cohen, Amanda Hillary Cook, Dr. Harry Cook. We also want to mention the name of my teacher, Dr. Michael Cook, who was taken from us during this past week as well. Philip Ehrenberg, Rachel Ehrlich, Abe Feldman, Babette Stryker Feldman, Isaac Feinsilver, Norma Jean Friedman, Hattie S. Friedenthal, Pearl Frosch, Stanford J. Green, Lillian Calif Gross, Mary Margaret Hahn, Ann Harris, Jerry V. Harris, Dorothy Helfer, Ben Hoffman, Selma Holes, Martha Beth Kahn, Harold Cantor, Joseph Lenoble, Louise Lehman, Charlotte Lehrberger, Tilly Lehrberger, Edward Levy, Ozzie Malik, Mike May, Arthur Meadow, Nina H. Meyerson, Marvin Naiman, Minnie Nierenberg, Joseph Plotkin, Samuel Plotkin, Lester Popiel, Max Radetsky, E. Meyer Rifkin, Bell Samuel Rosen, Harry Rosenbaum, Hilda Rubensall, David Rudd, Esther Gerald Sachs, Rachel Stern Sachs, Shelley Robin Sachs, Maurice Salomon, Faye G. Schaer, Leah Schiffner, Fanny Schoenberg, Nettie Schulman, Jenny S. Silverberg, Alice R. Simon, Charlotte P. Spiegelman, Rebecca Stein, and Elsie Talpers, Isaac Tepper, Rudolph Valas, Doris Weinrich, Libby Friedman Weisberg, Edward M. Wickler, Henry A. Winter, and Anne Klieger Young. And we remember 10 of the 420 precious souls from the community of Kolin: David Mendel, Sarah Tauba Maravkova, Herman Morovich, Zhneka Nugreshlova, Dr. Carol Ornstein, Eva Ornsteinova, Hermina Ornsteinova, Rita Ornsteinova, Oti Pachovska, and Jan Pachovsky. If there are other names that are not on this list but are in your hearts, type them in the chat, say them out loud. I'm going to ask if you have lost a loved one during the past 30 days to please rise now as you are able. If you are still in the 11-month period of mourning since the loss of a loved one, rise spiritually or physically. If you are observing a yahrzeit, the anniversary of a death on this Shabbat, rise, and we all rise with you. We stand with you in solidarity as a united community as we recite now words that have linked generation to generation, the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'la'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudsha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu va'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. And may the source of peace, who makes peace in places far beyond our knowing, send peace and comfort to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us all say, Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru.
And so we take a moment for a few announcements. Services, Shabbat and Pesach, all continue tomorrow. That joke never gets old. 9 a.m. will be Young Family Shabbat with Cantor Sachs, and I'm sure lots of other helpers and assistants. 10 o'clock, Torah study with Rabbi Black. 11 o'clock will be regular community service, and it will be Pesach 7th day service, and that will include Yizkor. So all of those are being combined, get combined into one service at 11 o'clock tomorrow, right here. All of that happens on Channel 1, on the website, or on our Facebook main page. And then Havdalah will be tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. as usual with someone, but it's not on here, so I don't know who. I don't have my calendar up.
With
Someone will
Rabbi
tell.
Black.
Rabbi
Rabbi
Black.
Black will be leading Havdalah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And likely some other members of his family, 2-legged and 4-legged as well. Just like to prepare you for all of the pets and kids that you're going to see. It's the best part of pandemic for me is who shows up on Zoom and how many legs they have. Okay. Moving on from there, a couple of other things that you should be aware of just for April. We're moving a couple of things around as we have to try and accommodate the schedule of reopening, which you all know about right now. We're super excited for it. One of the things that is moving is our clergy learning schedule. I've gotten a couple of questions about a clergy learning that I was going to teach that was starting in April. We're going to push that to the summer, and it will happen at some point in the summer, potentially in a hybrid situation so that we can learn in person. And also for those of you that are not ready for that, you will not be left behind, I promise. But Cantor Hyatt is going to be teaching our next clergy learning experience, which is very exciting. It doesn't start until April 28th, so you've got a little bit of time, but keep your eyes peeled in the e-notes and on Facebook for how to register for that. It'll be the same way that we always do. But that's really exciting. And then other things that are happening in April, it's the Yoms, Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaZikaron, Israeli Memorial Day, and Yom HaAtzmaut, which is Israeli Independence Day, all happen in April. And we've got a lot of things going on for those. So please check all of your media and email and things like that, all of your news for information about that. The one I do want to point out to you is that Sheila, Cantor Sachs's mother-in-law, who is wonderful and brilliant, is going to be with us next Shabbat for what we call Zikaron Basalon, which is an opportunity to have an intimate conversation about her experience as the child of survivors and her music. She is a brilliant musician and is going to share both of those pieces of herself with us. So please don't miss that. Make sure that you check the e-notes for information about that. The Anti-Defamation League and the governor are hosting Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance service. As always, that is this Thursday, I think. Right? I think it's this Thursday. Okay, good. And other than that, check the e-notes for everything else. There's lots of things coming up and more information forthcoming as we get it figured out safely and responsibly about what May is going to look like with having some people in person. We're really excited, and we're moving very carefully and very intentionally. So stay tuned for that news as it comes. And with that, I think we should make Kiddush.
Yes, let us make Kiddush. Wine is a big part of Passover, so let's continue to bless it. Here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron lemaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letzion Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, Be'ava uvratzon hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. And now we make motzi, which is the saddest blessing that we say over Passover. So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. And we conclude our service this evening just as we began with these words, Ozi v'zimrat yah, vayehili lishua, which come from the Song of the Sea, which we will read very beautifully tomorrow morning as we celebrate the liberation of our people. Ozi v'zimrat yah, vayehili lishua. I sing to God, for God is my strength and salvation. Ozi v'zimrat yah, vayehili
Eloheinu ve'Elohei kol dorotenu. Our God and the God of every generation. Each generation tells the story to the next. And as we build on our stories of wanderings, our stories of learning, our stories of fleeing, and our stories of making homes, we give you thanks for the ability to see, to be seen, to share, and to show what is important in our lives. At this time of rebirth and renewal, we give thanks. We give thanks for this day of Shabbat. We give thanks for your holy festival. We give thanks for this Kehila Kedoshah, this sacred community that comes together even when we're in different places to find you, to share in your love, to share in love of community. We ask your blessing on this Shabbat, on this Chag, this last day of Pesach, when we continue our journey together. Bruchim hayinu b'voenu, bruchim nihiyeh b'tzeitenu. Blessed were we in coming here, and blessed may we be as we go forth. For this time and always, Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach. See you tomorrow.